Again, and out. And feel free to continue breathing as I read Breath of Renewal by Tony Martignetti. Breathe in, breathe out, the rhythm of life. Inhale the future, exhale the strife. With each breath, a chance to renew, to let go of what no longer serves you. The past is gone, a memory to cherish. But holding on too tight can make you perish. Breathe in hope. Breathe out fear. The future awaits. It's almost here. Inhale the possibilities. Exhale the doubt. Let go of the worries that make you devout. Breathe in love. Breathe out hate. The present moment is yours to create. With every breath, a new beginning, a chance to let go of what's been clinging. Breathe in faith, breathe out despair. The future is bright, it's yours to share. So breathe in, breathe out, and let it go. The past is over. It's time to grow. Inhale the future. Exhale the past. Breathe in peace. And let's make it last.
All right, well, when I chose that reading, I didn't really think through too much that I was going to put all of you guys to sleep. So, in lieu of a children's moment, or a story for all ages, we're going to do a little contest this morning. All right, so we're going to do breathing one more time, but we're going to see how long you can hold your breath. All right? And everybody remembers doing this as a kid. So take a deep breath in all at once, and hold it. You guys are pretty good. All right, I'm hearing some exhales. All right, exhale everything out. That's what renewal is all about, that feeling that you first get at that second breath. It's just, yeah, you can feel it in your stomach, you can feel it in your lungs. You're not going to drown or die. It's always a good feeling. All right? All right. And the other good thing about that is you got all you guys carbon dioxide up enough that we hit the fight or flight so that you're not going to doze off after that awesome reading by Andy. So, here we go. Just the other day as I readied myself for a trip up to Half Moon Bay, I went to get in my perfectly parked car, precisely positioned 6 inches from the curb and nice and legally between my neighbor's driveway and the red-painted fire lane, only to be met with an unwelcoming $200 parking ticket. I know. What gives, I thought, as I grabbed the citation off my windshield and plotted a not-so-joyous trip to the downtown parking authority? That's when I paused to examine the rather expensive piece of paper and the words "registration expired" that were written across the top. Now, those of you who know me know that I only use my car on very sporadic basis, and in such, I can't always claim to keep up on its maintenance or documentation needs. Thus, upon a closer look at my license plate, I realized that I was indeed nearly a year late on renewing my tags. And it would seem that the parking authority was now on me as well. Needless to say, the cost of renewal was even more expensive than the ticket that I still had to pay. And if that wasn't enough, it also required an unpleasant adventure to the DMV. Yeah, everybody knows what that's like. Renewal. As it turns out, it's not an automatic nor passive process, but one that requires our action and effort in order to not get sighted in this experience that we call life. That and possibly a spiritual smogging every so often to make sure that we are not polluting the world in which we live with toxic bad vibes or negative emotions. For as the Bible states, it's not what goes into the body that defiles and dishonors a person, but what comes out. It's easy to forget to renew our automobiles, and even easier to pass on the renewal of our spirit. But spiritual renewal, unlike a car, is a blessing and not a burden. It's refreshing, it's reinvigorating, and it's reviving. But it requires our action. In the Jewish tradition, there's a renewal celebration every 7th Sabbath year, the year of Jubilee, that marks a time of forgiveness and revitalization. Well, it would seem that the Jews were onto something some 2,000 years ago, as modern science has now proven that every cell in the human body replaces itself once every 7 years. That means you are quite literally a completely new person, according to science, with a completely spiritually blank slate, according to the Jewish faith, more often than once every decade. This newness is an essential aspect of renewal, which is less about adhering to the status quo so much as about resurrecting the spirit by doing something different. In other words, it means much more than paying the registration fee on your automobile and getting another sticker to put on your license plate. Instead, think of renewal as getting a brand new car. But newness and change can be intimidating. Take the words of the chalice lighting from Christina Avrilero, and we used this morning. And let me reread that because, people drift during the chalice lighting. Change is supremely inconvenient, uncomfortable, and naturally scary. Yet we only move through life through the process of change, reinvention, and renewal. And so bravery is our quintessential rebel for pushing us past our own limiting beliefs and behaviors. Bravery is feeling the fear, immersing yourself into it and through it so you can come out the other side. Renewal. This topic is close to my own heart as someone who struggles with obsessive-compulsive disorder and the adherence to or addiction to a routine. Every day I go through the same pattern. I wake at the same time, I eat the same breakfast, I go for the same walk, etc., 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 to the point of insanity, which is fittingly defined, as many of you know, as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Pause here to ponder 3 essential words that go along with this topic of renewal. They are ritual, repetition, and rut. 3 interrelated words that trace the trajectory of today's topic. Let's start with ritual and use the fellowship as an example. We have a pattern of worship full of rituals here at the fellowship, as do most faith traditions. We gather at 10 a.m., we ring the singing bowl, we light the chalice, follow a pre-established order of service, and sing a benediction before breaking for lunch. It's comfortable, and it's familiar, and that can be a blessing. However, without intention, what started as a meaningful ritual, say lighting the chalice, can easily become a repetitious routine. And when we lose the mindful, ritualistic component of our doings and get stuck in our routines, those once revitalizing rituals can slowly become ruts. A ritual is what takes the mundane and makes it mystical. And it can be anything. Take, for instance, your morning coffee routine. What if tomorrow morning, instead of dumping prepackaged Folgers into a coffee machine, you took time to bless and grind the beans, and then French press them with gratitude for the gift of another day? I'd reckon to say that you'll find your morning goes a little bit better. But again, that requires intention and action on our end. Yes, renewal can mean reinvigorating any number of daily routines, with an emphasis on mindful awareness and newness. Take the practice of regenerative farming. If a farmer plants the same crops on the same plot of land every year, the soil will become stripped of all the nutrients needed to support growth, and the crops will wither and die. However, if that same farmer plants a new crop with a different biological makeup and output on the same tired plot, then the soil will actually be renewed via the newness and nutrients of these new plants, and it will become fertile once again. Thus, once more, renewal does not mean repeating the same routine over and over again every Sunday morning, but doing or planting something new that reinvigorates our soul and spiritual soil. So how do we get ourselves out of religious ruts? By reinvigorating or renewing our rituals through mindful awareness in a way that adds new meaning to the otherwise mundane. Pause for a moment to ponder what each aspect of our service means to you, as each component of worship initially started as a spiritually invigorating opportunity to grow closer to the divine. What if the chalice lighting lit a flame in your soul? What if the land acknowledgement connected you to the native tribes that once occupied this space? What if the joys and sorrows moved you into a time of deep reflection and prayer? What if the benediction song provided closure at the end of our service and excitement for the day at hand? What if worship was a dynamic and energizing hour each Sunday morning that prepared you for a week at hand? And what if these were not questions, but truths that kept you living a life of a spiritual high? The Hindu tradition is big on this experience of newness and renewal, as demonstrated by the recently celebrated Nav Varsh, or Springtime New Year tradition. Every spring, Hindus from around the world pause from life to fast for 9 days in preparation for a celebration themed around fresh beginnings. This spiritual renewal recognizes the newness of this season and an opportunity that it bears for a reinvigorated outlook on life. But if you do not have to be Buddhist in order to embrace change. You just have to be open to invigoration. Open and proactive in a society that has come to define renewal as a passive experience of R&R. Leading up to this service, our friend Andy over here, your esteemed worship associate for the morning, pointed out to me a new library book policy on renewals that mimics our sociological understanding on the renewal process. No longer do you have to go to the library to renew a book because the library now does it automatically for you. In other words, you don't have to think for yourself, nor travel to the library to ignore or to overcome late fees, because there's no more late fees to be had. You simply borrow a book and get it back when you're through reading it. That is, if you can finish reading a book without the incentive of a due date. This is fantastic news for anyone in attendance who avoids the library because of the running tab on their card. However, one must ask themselves, what do we miss out on by not needing to visit the book borrowing building? You miss out on perusing the shelves for new adventures, the interaction shared with a passionate staff, and the feeling of nostalgia that comes from entering a building that provided you such a sense of imaginative freedom as a child. So for as much as we hate paying late fees, it's so essential that we don't take renewal passively or for granted in this increasingly automated world in which we live, but instead actively seek out ways to reinvigorate our spirit. Because again, renewal isn't about rest and recovery so much as it is about revitalization. That's not to say a little R&R isn't helpful now and again. And it's my prayer that these Sunday services do recharge you. But renewal is an action word associated with newness and change, whereas passivity provides a one-way ticket into the aforementioned rut. The philosopher Epicurus offers up some wisdom on the subject through his teachings on what he refers to as the swerve. Every so often the world provides us with an opportunity for a change, he says. Take, for instance, the recent COVID pandemic. In these instances, we have to choose as to whether we cling to the past and attempt to recreate it in an altered society, or whether we choose to swerve along with it and open ourselves up to a new norm that takes into account the changes in the world around us. This is an early example of Darwin's teachings on evolution and a call to be proactive. When turning to Wikipedia, the cheat sheet for modern day research, the words resurrection and reincarnation were given as synonyms for renewal, and each has relevance with the respective religious tradition. Yes, as the bumper sticker states, Jesus saves and Buddha recycles. But who renews? The answer is you. Simple as that. You are solely responsible for resurrecting your spirit, and not simply on Sunday mornings, but daily, sporadically even, regardless of the faith tradition that you follow. This may mean a spiritual Christian resurrection via the sacrament of baptism or the breaking of bread representative of the body of Christ, or it could mean a complete reincarnation of one's self and spirit in relationship to the Buddhist teachings on the eternal living. One of my favorite passages about renewal comes from the Apostle Paul's letter to the Roman Church, in which he writes, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, God's good and perfect will." With this newness comes a clear head, a head unclouded by the doings of the past and our tendency to stick our spirituality on cruise control. We have to think for ourselves instead of functioning on autopilot. Renew instead of rest and relax. And that can be scary because we have gotten really good at going through the motions. And why not? Routine is known, and in that sense it's safe. Yet without intention and our active participation, it will naturally leave us in a place of complacency, or the dreaded rut. I've always taught that we should strive to be content without ever being complacent, gracious for the world that we live in, yet not oblivious to the fact that it is largely out of our control. Thus our call today and in all the days to come is to do something different each day. Start small, like switching up that coffee routine that we alluded to earlier, and take time afterwards to meditate on how it made you feel. My inclination is that you might well become addicted to change. It's not finding a new norm because there isn't a norm to be found, but being reborn and filled with the excitement of reading or writing an evolving identity into life. Transitions are a part of life, writes David Simon. A part of life that allows for perpetual renewal. When you experience the end of one chapter, allow yourself to feel the emotions of loss and rebirth. A bud gives way to a new flower, which surrenders to a new fruit, which gives rise to a new seed, which yields a new sprout. Even as you ride that roller coaster, embrace the centered internal reference to the ever-present witness. So what transition is life calling you into this season or year? We are at the precipice of a big one here as a community of faith as we seek out a new ministerial leader. And when we find one, things are going to be a little different. What worked with Reverend Russ may not work well with our new leader. In that sense, we are called to be a river of sorts, flowing through this experience of life while shape-shifting to constantly changing containers or landscapes. In such, we must adhere to the ancient adage, you can't step into the same river twice. For the water is always flowing, whether you choose to change with it or not. Spiritual renewal means baptizing yourself often in fresh waters. And here in Santa Cruz, those are often cold waters too, which provides an added gift of revitalization. Because there is nothing as reviving as a leap into icy cold water to revitalize the senses. However, our natural human inclination is to tiptoe in, slowly exposing ourselves to the uncomfortable feelings of frigidness without surrendering to taking the plunge that we know will energize your soul. So as you go out today, I want you to keep that in mind. Whatever it is that meets you, jump in head first and submerge yourself in absolute bliss of something new. And enjoy that icy cold shock as it revitalizes your spirit.